Tom and Joan are ready to retire. They're 60 and 63 years old, and they don't want to have to wait until 65 when they'll qualify for Medicare. This is the major issue that they are facing. How can they retire and afford health insurance? They've seen horror stories, they've looked at quotes for health insurance, and the idea of spending thousands of dollars a month for a high deductible insurance plan is not something that they want to do. So we're going to look at retiring early, qualifying for affordable health insurance, tax advantage strategies throughout all of their retirement, making sure they have enough income so they can have the type of lifestyle they want, and also making sure they don't overspend to damage or, put in jeopardy their long-term financial security. In this video, in addition to tax advantage strategies, we're going to look at overall investment approach. We are also going to look at how to maximize Social Security. So these are all things that are very relevant for somebody who is going to retire early. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this retirement case study. So Tom and Joan live in North Carolina. Tom has worked as a software engineer for most of his life. Joan has worked off and on, but doesn't have a strong earnings history. So for their retirement, as we're looking at income sources, let's look over what they've saved up, Social Security benefits and everything. They've saved $1.25 million in an IRA account. They've also saved $750,000 in a brokerage account. Now, one of the great things they have going for them, in addition to the savings that they've accumulated, is they also have a rental property. Now, after all the expenses of running the rental, they're actually able to take in $1,200 a month. And one of the great things about rental income as a retiree is the tax advantages. So even though they're bringing in $1,200 a month, I won't go into all the details, but not all of that income is actually taxable to them. And this is very important for one of the issues that they're facing as an early retiree, which is qualifying for affordable health insurance. And health insurance, the way that is calculated, or I should say, the amount you pay for your monthly premium is determined by your modified adjusted gross income. So short story or long story short, the lower your modified adjusted gross income, the lower your monthly premium, because you'll qualify for a higher health insurance subsidy through the Affordable Care Act. And so even if their cash flow is higher, they have more dollars coming in, as long as we can keep that MAGI at a certain level, they can qualify for subsidies and hopefully make this all more doable, just more affordable to them. With their Social Security benefits, like I mentioned, Tom has a strong earning history, so his benefit, if he waits until age 67, is going to be $4,000 a month. Joan does qualify for a benefit. It's quite a bit less than that, about $2,600 a month. So like I said, she's worked off and on over the years. So with this, let's take a look at the cash flow and everything. So I'm going to pull up the screen here. Let's look at an overview of their retirement plan as it stands with all of these inputs into consideration. Okay, so you can see what I have on the screen in front of us. We're looking at a retirement plan overview. So like I said, they've saved $2 million for retirement, retiring this month, and they have a retirement budget, what they'd like to spend, just basically, to cover all their basic needs, and they've also factored in some expenses for travel. They've also thought about setting aside money for really the big wild card is health insurance. So in this plan, they thought, we don't know what it's going to be. Let's just plan on $1,500 a month. So really, if we look at their spending, they, without health insurance, they only need about $8,500 a month. So we have that targeted spending of $10,000, as a baseline for their plan. But let's see if we can get their taxable income to a place where they can qualify for some more affordable health insurance. They also have a rental property bringing in $1,200 a month. So let's look at the cash flow over time. We'll do a couple of things here. Let's look at their cash flow, where the income sources are coming in. Let's discuss their Social Security claiming decision and what would probably make sense for somebody in their situation. Then let's take a look at the taxes for health insurance. How can we manage things, and how much of a subsidy could they qualify for? And so we'll compare their pre-subsidy health insurance projections with a projection of their health insurance after subsidy to get an idea. So let's look at the entire plan and go from there. So first, looking at their cash flows, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting to look at is how to maximize your Social Security income benefit as a retiree. And in their case, kind of an interesting dynamic here. Tom is a couple of years older than Joan. He's 63 and she's only 60 years old. And when it comes to kind of maximizing benefits, it usually makes sense to have the spouse with the higher earnings history, have them delay their benefit for as much as possible. So maybe that's until full retirement age, or it could be until age 70. Of course, you may be familiar, but if you delay your Social Security benefit beyond your full retirement age, you actually get an 8% bonus per year to that benefit that adjusts for inflation, and the surviving spouse will receive that full benefit. So if Tom passes away, Joan will get that full age 70 benefit, which is really great. Now, obviously, this kind of begs the question, okay, so how are they going to cover their income needs before they claim Social Security if we're talking about Tom waiting a couple of years, obviously? So on the screen in front of us, this chart shows us a timeline and kind of an illustration of the cash flows. Where is the money coming from? So starting in 2026, you can see as we go along where the different income sources would be coming from. So you can see here that these different colors represent different sources of income. So the purple represents taking money out of the portfolio. So taking money out of the IRA, taking money out of the brokerage account. And the yellow is Tom's Social Security benefit. Now I mentioned Joan does qualify for a benefit on her own earnings history. And so that's here in the light blue. And this dark blue is that rental income that I talked about earlier. So you can see here starting this year, if they're going to delay Social Security, then it's pretty straightforward. Where are they going to get income from? Well, they've got the rental income, but that's not enough to cover all of their expenses. So they're going to be pulling money from the portfolio for the first couple of years, and that's going to make up all of their income. So we're looking at pulling out about $8,900 a month from their portfolio, plus the $1,200 a month from the rental income as we go along. For this plan, I actually have Joan waiting until she is 65 years old to claim her Social Security benefit. The reason for her waiting until age 65 has a little bit more to do. Part of this, kind of optimization that went into this recommendation for these guys is that they need to qualify for affordable health insurance. So her delaying just a couple more years beyond the earliest year that she could take it at age 62 is going to give them a couple more years of kind of income flexibility to qualify for that affordable health insurance. And then I have here Tom waiting until he is 70 years old to claim his benefit, which is pretty incredible because once he claims, his $4,000 a month benefit actually gets an 8% bonus per year. That's an extra 24% to his benefit. But you can see this number here is about $5,700 a month. That's because it's also factoring in cost of living adjustments. You need to remember that even after you stop working, you'll still qualify for cost of living adjustments to your benefit. So pretty cool. You'll look at your statement every November as you get that updated annual Social Security income projection, and that number is just going to keep going up and up with the Consumer Price Index. So as we go along, you can see that once they have claimed both of them Social Security, the amount they're pulling from the portfolio is quite low. So if you're kind of minded to thinking about what is a safe withdrawal rate from your portfolio, you might look at this initially and say, wow, if they're pulling out $8,900 a month, that's a little too much, or that's maybe not sustainable at any rate to do over their entire retirement. But it's not that big of a deal in their case because they don't have to do that. It's only for a few years until they've claimed Social Security, at which point the lion's share of their income is coming from Social Security. So their withdrawal rate from the portfolio becomes very sustainable. Now, kind of interesting here. You can see that we have this kind of ladder stair step going up and up and up and up and up. The reason for this, if they only need $10,000 a month, you might ask, why is their income just going up and up and up? Well, this has to do with required minimum distributions that kick in, you can see here, at age 75 for Tom. So even though they don't need the income, they're going to be in a situation where they are forced to take out more income than they actually need. And is that the worst thing in the world? No, it's not the worst thing in the world. But what it does mean is that they're probably going to be paying more taxes than they really need to. So this is another thing that we need to look at for optimizing their plan. So we've looked at how to optimize their plan for income for Social Security. And if we look at projections of their overall income plan, you're going to see that they really have very little risk of running out of money. This is a very strong plan. So this is a risk analysis we're looking at. And if we take their plan and map it against thousands of scenarios based on historical stock market and bond market information, you can see that, man, they have a really good probability of never running out of money. So in 99% of those scenarios, they were able to have their inflation adjusted income, no problem. And there's a little bit of extra information here. What this is saying is that on average, they're able to have about 26% higher income than they had actually, than that $10,000 a month that we're planning for. What this really says to me as a planner is that, you know what, this plan is probably overly conservative. Or I should say, their expectations for income are much lower than what they could actually take out. So we could even rerun this plan and look at how much income is actually possible while still having the plan be sustainable. You would find that they could actually have a much higher income. Let's talk about the tax planning strategies at this point, because remember, as early retirees, we have to figure out how to have affordable health insurance. So let's take a look at that. So what I did is I ran some health insurance quotes Yes, we do want to continue. For a husband and wife, 63 and 60 years old. Now, without health insurance subsidies, let's look at what a high deductible plan would be. So on the screen in front of us, I just happened to run it for Charlotte, North Carolina, and you can see that this health insurance plan, this high deductible plan through the Affordable Care Act, would cost them only $94 a month. But the full price for this plan, if they didn't qualify for subsidies, would be $1,981 a month. So basically almost $2,000 a month for a high deductible health insurance plan. So if that's giving you a little bit of heartburn to think about paying $2,000 a month, you're in good company. I think most people, nobody wants to pay that. So begs the question, how did we get the price from almost $2,000 a month down to $94 a month? Well, it's through qualifying for subsidies. So for this projection, I put in that they would have a modified adjusted gross income of $84,000 for the year, which is just below the high water mark for qualifying for subsidies. Truth be told, we could lower that income projection and that subsidy would be even higher, but I'm using the upper limit number just really to illustrate, even just barely qualifying for it, the savings are pretty incredible. $94 a month versus $1,980 a month. They're saving about $1,800 a month in subsidy. So how do we do that? Well, it really comes down to some very smart tax planning with their retirement income plan. In the beginning of their retirement, you can see from this cash flow projection that we are just pulling money from the portfolio. Now remember, and I should say they have a little bit of rental income. So from the portfolio, they have IRA money and they have brokerage account money. So if we are able to pull money primarily from the brokerage account, a lot of that money in their case is going to be tax-free because it's money that has already been taxed. So that is one simple way that we can get them to qualify for this $1,800 a month subsidy for several years that they need. Frankly, for Joan, it's going to be for 5 years, and for Tom, it's only going to be 2 years, but in total, 5 years of their plan, we need to think about qualifying for the subsidy. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. We have figured out how they can retire early and qualify for affordable health insurance. However, that doesn't completely solve the tax planning problem, because you can see that if that's all we do is just live on the brokerage account, then yes, they're going to have affordable health insurance and low taxes early in retirement. But as they go further along in retirement, they're going to have these required distributions, which force them to take out a lot more money than they need to, and they'll end up paying a lot higher taxes. So let's look at maybe, is there some way that we can both qualify for affordable health insurance and lower their long-term tax projections? So I'm going to come over here into this tax planning module, and let's look at maybe some different methods or approaches we could use of pulling money out of the portfolio in order to maybe kind of have the best of both worlds. So on the screen in front of us, what we're doing is running several different kind of distribution calculations. The software is doing kind of the hard legwork of looking at running different approaches. Now on the screen, you can see what is being recommended here, or what is being illustrated, maybe a better way to put it, is that if they were to do a 12% per year tax bracket Roth conversion strategy compared to just the pulling money out of the brokerage account first, then the IRA, that would save them about 8% per year average tax rate over the life of their retirement plan, which will save them about $1.5 million in taxes, which is pretty incredible, saying that they only have $1.25 million in their IRA. So they're going to be able to projected to save more than their total IRA balance in taxes over their, let's say they live 30 plus years in retirement. So I'm going to show you this map here, which basically compares different tax distribution approaches. So here on the left-hand side, we have different tax strategies of how we can pull money out. Then we have average tax rate, total taxes, total net income, and total net legacy, which is basically how much money is left over. Let's say that they both live for 35 years in retirement, they both pass away. This is really just kind of an estimate of how much money is left over at the end. Not the most important consideration. We want to make sure they have something at the end. It's just one of many kind of variables to look at. So you can see that if they do nothing, that their projected tax rate is going to be about 15% per year. But with some Roth conversion strategies, and what's highlighted here is doing something like a 12% Roth conversion strategy, that would drop them from 15% down to about 8% per year. It looks like actually, if they were to do a little bit more of an aggressive Roth conversion approach, we might even be able to drop this average tax rate even further. So some things to consider here. Now, if we do a 12% Roth conversion strategy approach, there are some issues with this, because if they convert up to the 12% tax bracket, which is having taxable income of about $90-something thousand per year, that is going to put them over the ACA limit before qualifying for that $1,800 a month subsidy. So we have to balance these two tax strategies into the same plan. So what does that realistically mean? Let's just kind of think through this. Okay, overall, we want to qualify for subsidies, check. On the other hand, overall, doing Roth conversions up to the 12% bracket is going to save them, projected to save them about $1.5 million over the life of their retirement. Okay, can we have both of them? Well, not perfectly, but mostly. So this is what that would look like, is in the first 5 years of retirement, instead of doing Roth conversions up to the full 12% bracket, maybe we need to kind of throttle that just a little bit to keep them under the 400% poverty line. So for them, that looks like converting only up to a modified adjusted gross income of about $84,000. Probably want to have some buffer room in there. But basically what this looks like is for the first 5 years, let's keep their tax bracket below the full 12%, right? So the benefit, we qualify for subsidies. The downside is we're not getting as much Roth conversion to get the full max out this projected $1.5 million tax savings. So maybe, we're converting just a little bit less for the first 5 years, but then after that, we can convert up to the full 12% bracket. We could possibly even do a little bit more Roth conversion if it made sense. Now, what I like to do when creating a retirement income plan is we can project out, look at different approaches to see how to maximize savings and kind of optimize the plan. But another layer here probably is going to seem pretty obvious to you is that we have to look at this on a year-to-year basis and kind of update and tweak the plan based on circumstances that are going to change. Some things that will apply to a retiree's life. You need extra money to pay for a child's wedding, or something happens, you need extra money for something, and it's going to change the plan. Okay, so we need to update the plan based on things happening in your own life. Then there's other things that happen that you don't have control over. Like, let's say there's a change in the tax code. Well, we have to adjust the plan for those things. You don't have control over them. So this is just to say that as we go along from year to year, we need to be aware of changes in the tax code, updating and optimizing the plan from year to year. But it does really help to start from the beginning with a lay of the land and have an approach that we kind of have directionally a good idea of what's probably going to make sense. And then from year to year, we're not having to reinvent the strategy of what makes sense, but we can just tweak it as circumstances change, whether it be something in your own life or something outside of your control, like a change to the tax code. So with all this being said, you can see that Tom and Joan, to answer their question, can they retire early? I think the answer is an absolute yes. Will they be able to have as much income as they want? Absolutely. We're not even looking at their maximum spending here, but just with the $10,000 a month, you have a very secure plan, and their projected health insurance cost is going to be a lot lower than what they thought they needed. So they're actually, of that $10,000 a month, more of that's going to go to stuff that they want to do, more travel, extra things, compared to going to pay for health insurance premiums. So with all that in mind, I hope that this case study gives you a good idea of both the possibilities of smart planning as an early retiree, and it also gives you an idea of what could realistically be possible. So now that we've reviewed this case study, I think you have a good idea of what are some of the possibilities and benefits for an early retiree from a tax planning standpoint and from the standpoint of maximizing income. We covered a lot of different topics in this retirement case study, and probably not everything that applied to this case study is going to apply to your situation, but it does, I think, give us all a really good idea of kind of what is possible. So if you'd like some help looking at the specifics of your situation and creating a retirement income plan, click the link in the description. I'd be happy to sit down one-on-one with you for a free retirement consultation to help you take your situation and map out the early retirement that makes sense for your life. So with that being said, I hope you have a great week. I hope this information was helpful, and I'll catch you in the next video.